the entire series, Secret Invasion's finale was a mixed bag. I kind of liked it, but I also kind of hated it. Highlights, though, I would say, are the fight, where I thought the VFX were actually pretty good. We're going to break that down at the end of this breakdown. And also, I thought the ending was nice, even though I have no faith in that couple's longevity. But to see Nick Fury and his Skrull wife, Varra, thank you very much, doing a Close Encounters of the Third Kind, well, I'm at least glad they had that happy moment. Although, if Varra doesn't show up in the Marvels, I'm going to be annoyed. I was going to say upset, but because I'm pretty sure she's not in the Marvels, I don't want to be upset. So I'm just going to go with annoyed. And also, how is Gaia not in the Marvels after these developments? It's really ridiculous. And that's my biggest concern coming out of this show. Kevin Feige's dance card is so full. How can he possibly build on what's been introduced here in a timely manner, if at all? It's like, how does this not lead directly, well, into the Marvels, quite frankly? Which was, by the way, supposed to open on Friday, but they had to swap it out with Haunted Mansion because the Marvels needed reshoots. Why didn't the reshoots include adding these characters? So Gaia, who now has the powers of not only most of the Avengers, but their galactic enemies, is now the most powerful being in, well, most likely the entire universe. And she and the rest of the Skrulls are now going to work for Sonya Falsworth and the UK. Yoink! Very good on Sonya, but I can't believe Nick Fury allowed that to happen, because it puts the UK suddenly on equal footing with the United States in terms of firepower. I mean, it's a one-woman Avengers, and now now the UK has the superior clandestine operation. Again, if I were the US government, well, we'll talk about Ritson, he's an idiot, but I think other people in the US government would be like, Fury, talk about dropping the ball here, right? I mean, in one fell swoop, Sonya Falsworth was able to bring the UK up to speed with the United States after everything that Fury had done, giving the UK basically an Avengers and a Skrull clandestine operation. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. And will that be explored at all? How can you not discuss this further? This is a huge development. And again, as I said, why isn't Gaia in the Marvels? Considering her closeness to Fury and Carol Danvers, not just story-wise, but now powers-wise. Wouldn't one of Fury's first calls be to Carol and be like, well, a funny story, Carol. I stole your DNA, and then I gave it to a Skrull, who might be a little miffed at you as well, because she's certainly upset with me for not getting them a home planet. I mean, how is Carol Danvers not a part of the story? And it's the MCU's fault, because this didn't used to have anything to do with Fury and Carol Danvers. They're the ones who decided to build it out of to put that in the Captain Marvel movie, and then to build Secret Invasion out of that. And so how do you then not continue to do it? And I also think, to be honest with you, creating another strong female character is just too much right now. It's too many in a row, and the ones that came before have not gone over well enough. It's like quality over quantity. Gaia, to me, is just a brunette Carol Danvers. Her character is, quite frankly, not needed in any sense. She wasn't needed in this whole show, in my opinion. I would have preferred for her to become Abigail Brand, as many of us suspected. I think her becoming the only Super Skrull is not satisfying, and I actually think it's a mistake. You know who should have been the remaining Super Skrull? Talos! And I would have talked, maybe Ben Mendelsohn didn't want to stick around, but I would have just kept offering him more money until he did. I think people would be so much more excited if it had been Talos, and to have Ben Mendelsohn get to play that role. How cool would that have been, right? And then after this journey, emotionally and physically, he makes the choice to leave Fury in the United States for Falsworth in the UK. I mean, not only would this give the MCU more balance in terms of characters, but more emotional meaning to the journey of this show, to the character arcs, because we spent all of our time exploring Fury and Talos, and no time on Gaia. So that would have been so much better for Talos to say, you know, we did 30 years, Fury. I'm going to go try it with across the pond with the UK and Falsworth and see if I get a better deal there, especially now that I have all these powers and I can call the shots even more. That, to me, would have been immensely more satisfying. Also, while you might be able to get all these powers, how do you instantly know how to use them? Especially since Gravik and Gaia don't have access to any of the memories that go along with any of these powers, like they do when Skrulls usually impersonate people and super powered people. And well, they weren't duplicating any superpowers, but I just don't understand how they were immediately able to jump into being able to use these powers so easily. So you think the struggle would have been part of the fight. And it's just weird to introduce such a powerful character, far more powerful than the Super Skrulls ever were in the comics, and then give no clear indication as to when we'll ever see her again, creatively or from a business point of view. And the way the MCU has been going lately, I just don't have any faith that it will be handled well. So it takes me out of it because I'm like, oh, wow, what are you going to do with this? And Kevin Feige's like, quite frankly, I just put a pin in it. I'm just going to assume it all goes to plan and just leave it alone. I mean, maybe she could join the new Guardians of the Galaxy. I could see maybe that for her. Or is she just going to continue to work for Fallsworth in the shadows and just... She's such a powerful character. How is this not the focus of the MCU now? And also the fallout that Fury stole all of their DNA. How is that not the next story? How is that not what the Marvels is about, or Captain Marvel 2 is about? All right, by the way, I find it totally unbelievable that Fury couldn't find a single planet in the entire universe for the Skrulls to call home. He's like, I checked, and then I was like, oh wow, there aren't any. And I'm like, the Guardians of the Galaxy are constantly doing road trips, and they're visiting habitable planets again and again and again. And speaking of the Guardians of the Galaxy, if Fury and Danvers couldn't have gotten it done, and Danvers has been going all over the galaxy and the universe for decades. Did she forget? I think she forgot to look for a home for the Skrulls. But why not just ask the Guardians of the Galaxy? Be like, hey, you know a planet I could stick all these aliens? I mean, why not just put them on nowhere? I think the Guardians of the Galaxy should have been consulted and would have wanted to be consulted about this. Why isn't a Skrull on the Guardians of the Galaxy team? But it seems that the Skrulls might actually be able to go to their original home again, as Fury states at the end. So much talk instead of show. It's shocking to me. That's a cardinal rule of visual storytelling, of a visual medium. But anyway, you can do flashbacks. So Fury says that they've started peace talks with the Kree. Although again, in the Marvels, which comes out very soon, those Kree at least don't seem very peaceful. And what would motivate the Kree to enter peace talks? The Kree-Skrull conflict in the comics, and to some degree in Captain Marvel, was presented as being the space version of like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Just totally unsolvable because it goes so deep. But then, of course, in the comics, Hulkling comes along, a royal mix of both alien species, and he is able to unite them finally. And it's not even easy. I mean, it's been a struggle because, they don't want to be together. So to have the Kree and Skrulls make peace on their own, off camera, robs Hulkling, a very popular character, of his one major storyline. He's got one. This is it. And they've taken it away. Plus, if the Kree and the Skrulls have made peace, Hulkling would never have to go into hiding on Earth in the first place and would never meet Wiccan and fall in love and never join the Young Avengers, although maybe he's already in hiding as we speak, and maybe the Kree and Skrull peace armada would bring him out of hiding. But this development just creates an absolute mess for one of Marvel's most popular couples. And also, from what I've heard about Agatha, they're certainly changing a lot about Wiccan there. And so it's like, why? It was perfect! Just leave it alone! All right, Kree-Skrull peace talks. We got those now going on. Vibranium negotiations, a lot of battlefield fights and also boardroom fights. But it's too much. With the Fox acquisition and Disney Plus, the MCU has exploded, but it has also lost its focus and structure. There's too much happening and too much of it is disconnected, which robs the MCU of its defining trait, which is, I think, largely responsible for why it became so successful, and that it's telling all one big story. It's no longer doing that. They didn't even talk about the multiverse here, which is insane. I also would have loved an episode dedicated, they only had 6 episodes. Give me one more, just one, dedicated in flashbacks, because, I think they wanted the reveals to be a surprise, fine. But once we knew who the Skrulls were in hiding, why not have a flashback episode dedicated to how they got switched to be Skrulls? Again, in Secret Invasion, the flashback comic, which tells the story of how Hank Pym got turned, was one of the best things that I've ever read. So how is that not an episode here? Everett Ross, point blank, turns to Rhodey and says, "How long have you been here?" And Rhodey didn't answer? But although based on the fact that Rhodey was the only human who couldn't walk out of the Skrull facility of his own accord, it's obviously been quite a while because his legs are atrophied. I think was it because he injured his legs and he didn't have his his walking apparatus. Oh, yeah. You know, this stuff's just not clear enough. It's just crazy. And there's just too much of it to keep track of. And speaking of things I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen Gravik's first kill and him make the decision to take that human's face, to explore that human's life. How did he find out so much about that human? That he had a family, that he said the human was misguided? Who was it? Who did Fury order him to kill? I can't argue if that was a fair order for Fury to give until I know more about the story. I can't take just Gravik's word for it. And so again, show, don't tell. And so that was frustrating. Also, a lot of Skrulls chose on this show to take on black faces as their default human look. And Fury also throughout the season talked about his own hardships as a black human. So I would have liked the show to have made that an intentional mirroring. Maybe because of their relationship to Fury himself, but also maybe just because the Skrulls feel a kinship with another group that's been discriminated against. It was something that stood out and yet was never addressed. And there was a really nice way to address it that was right there. I'd also have liked to have seen Talos' wife and Gaia's mother killed, or a time when they all got along, because as is, when Gaia says, "You killed my whole family, Gravik," I'm like, you didn't seem that sad about it before, Gaia, and she's like, "Well, I'm upset about it now." And I'm like, poor writing. And what makes Falsworth think that the Skrulls will follow Gaia, by the way? She had absolutely no respect in the group under Gravik. She was not Gravik's second in command. He rarely involved her in things, and when he did, it was only because he felt she was a spy for her father. And her father, Talos, had lost all of the Skrull support. So so Falsworth's going to be like, hey, Gravik didn't work out because Talos didn't work out. You want to go back to Talos, now for Talos 2.0? I think the Skrulls would be like, no, we don't. I mean, I think that they would have another Skrull. I mean, Gaia might be the most powerful, but I think in terms of Skrull leadership, it would be another Skrull or a new Skrull council that they would put together. And now we know what happens to President Ritson. As Fury predicts, Ritson will be a one-term president I was like, wow, way to just throw one quick sloppy line in there to underscore how President Ross gets elected for Captain America 4. Because Ritson has such a disastrous way to handle the Skrull situation, right? So that makes me think, okay, what's President Ross's idea? What does he campaign under? And will the MCU even bother to address it? If they've addressed why Ritson doesn't get reelected, they have to address why Ross does, right? You would think. But Ritson's hate speech announcing the U.S.'s intention to kill all Skrulls on sight, that seems ridiculous to me. It's been proven that some Skrulls are helpful. A Skrull saved his life, Talos, right? So Talos died for nothing, by the way. And also, Ritson's words inspired civilians to execute Skrulls and humans that they think are Skrulls right in the streets. And apparently have no consequences. I didn't see any of those people being arrested. So it's extremely poorly thought out from the human side. And then on the Skrull side, how did the Skrulls not immediately fight back, right? Or why do you not show the Skrulls making plans to fight back, especially when they've been confronted with such an ultimatum? And since they're not Super Skrulls, Gravik's dead, we'll talk about that. Gaia's the only one left. How are they should be worried. And then it's revealed that far more humans than we had first thought have been replaced by Skrulls, with a throwaway scene that's very poorly done, by the way. I had to rewatch that with subtitles on to understand what was happening. And how would there just not be mass murder across the globe with everyone claiming, hey, I thought they were a Skrull, my bad. Has anyone associated with the show ever been on social media? It made no sense. It was dangerous, and I didn't think it unfolded at the scale that it actually would under those circumstances. And by the way, what took so long for them to shoot Rhodey? I thought they let that situation get way too close to the wire. He didn't even have a weapon. What happened to Sonya Falsworth's plan of shooting Skrulls in limbs or cutting off limbs to reveal them? Why didn't someone just shoot Skrull Rhodey in the thigh and be like, there you go, Mr. President? I just have zero faith in the MCU to grow the seeds that they've planted here, especially because they were planted so poorly. All right, let's break down this big fight this episode. Gaia versus Gravik. G versus G. So the more Fury coughed, the more I suspected that it was Gaia. He was like, it's like Ace Ventura, like, I was like, it's so obvious. This Gaia is clearly not an actress. She has not absorbed the memories of an actor. There's no way Fury, first of all, would put himself in that position. I mean, I guess Gravik did think that he wanted to die, but I was like, I think he would want to die with more dignity. And he was just deteriorating far too quickly. I was like, this is just ridiculous. And why Gravik didn't pull him out of the machine before turning on made no sense to me. I mean, I guess, again, you could argue that Gravik felt that the machine would kill Fury because he wasn't a Skrull. But how does he know for sure? Particularly because the DNA that Gravik is using is human before it was augmented. So why couldn't it augment the DNA of another human? I mean, he had no way to know for sure that he wouldn't be powering up and saving the life of his enemy. And if this show could afford the Captain Marvel effect, by the way, looking far better than it does in the Marvels trailer. So kudos to this show for that. But why not just bring back Carol? Why didn't she show up for the finale? If they can do the Captain Marvel effect, where is Brie Larson, who has been conspicuously absent from the story that she helped start in her first movie? Everyone's like, we blame you, Fury, and Carol Danvers. But, she's just never going to show up. And you're like, and we thought it was because they couldn't afford her, but they clearly can't afford to do it. I thought the VFX on this fight was pretty good overall, actually. I guess this is where all the 200+ million went. Although I felt Gravik stopped looking like Gravik when he turned into a Skrull, and that kind of bothered me. I'm not to say that that's not Kingsley Ben-Adir underneath all that makeup, but when the other Skrulls turned into their Skrull selves, they still looked you could tell, like with Varra, she still looks like the actress. So that kind of was a little bit, it felt disjointed. I didn't really feel like she was fighting Gravik, to be honest with you. It was cool to see the Super Skrull look, finally. Quadrants representing the powers they're using. 2 arms and a leg, and 1 ear, apparently. So that was kind of neat. Yet here, there are so many powers. So so it was quadrants when they duplicated just the Fantastic Four. So quadrants for the 4 powers. But here they have so many powers at their disposal, they're just switching through them at will, and it doesn't matter which limb. And that's distracting because, you're looking at the limb, you're like, okay, which power is that? And then also, by the way, some of them look very much alike. Like Groot and Abomination look pretty similar, and they all kind of chose, I was like, you guys have some repetitive power sets here. You don't need all of those, right? And there was someone else who was very rocky. Who it was the other rocky person? I couldn't think of who that was because I was like, okay, we have Groot, we have Abomination, we have Drax, but I was like, who is that other one? But also it's distracting how powerful these Super Skrulls are now. I mean, it just also takes you out of the story because you're like, what are we going to do with this? Who could fight them besides each other? And then one of them just killed the other one. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a second. I don't know how she could have killed Gravik, quite frankly. But first off, some of my favorite powers used here. Ghost, that was a nice callback. At first, I had no idea how she did that. And then I was like, oh yeah, Ghost from that one movie. Finally, some ice action from the Frost Beasts. I'm like, how do you not have one fist of ice and one fist of fire? What a missed opportunity. And of course, Ebony Maw, a being so powerful that he almost destroyed the Avengers single-handedly. But why not just go full Ebony Maw? I'm like, I don't even need all these other powers. I'm just going to do an Ebony Maw. Then obviously Captain Marvel, very powerful as well. And Mantis was a really nice touch. I love that, showing that it's not just enough to have all these powers. You have to be a good strategist to think of how to use them. Although isn't Gravik supposed to be a very successful general as well? And this has been his plan for years at least. So you think he'd be ready to go and hit the ground running to use all these powers, since this was his plan all along. So, all right, let's talk about killing Gravik. How did she pull that off, considering he has the extremist capability? I guess this is somewhat similar to how Aldrich Killian was killed. But, it was just a hole. And she'd stabbed him and made a hole earlier in the same fight with the Frost ability. I was like, this is just another hole, right? I think she'd have to cut him in half, or I would really say she'd have to cut his head off. I think that's really the only way you could defeat a Super Skrull. And even then, I'd be like, Groot can regrow from a head, so maybe this Skrull can too, quite frankly. And I guess it's a Disney show, but it just made no sense to me that Gravik was dead. I didn't believe it. I still don't totally believe it. And I think it's a missed opportunity not to have 2 Super Skrulls. Just one? Again, what are we going to do with this? And I would also say, apologies to Amelia Clarke, but she's just too small physically to really sell this new character. When she transforms her limbs to Hulk, Drax, etc., they just seem oddly small. I'm like, it's like a baby Hulk or something, or a baby Drax, right? Her visual styling also is very boring and dull. So she just doesn't pop as a character. I mean, I don't know when we're going to see her again, and I want to see her again because this is such an important development, but yet I'm not excited about it because she's not that cool a character. Even with having everybody's powers. I guess because also you're like, it's just too much. I wish she had just taken a few of the powers, quite frankly. It could be more than 4, but just to give her some limitations as a character. I think that just makes it more interesting. This is just nuts. Also, to me, Amelia Clarke will always be Daenerys, a role I think she's much better suited for. And also, and I think because that didn't end in a satisfying manner, I think that also will always hang over us. We're like, does she have the power to go back to Game of Thrones and return? I mean, I still feel she's not dead either, quite frankly. So those are my thoughts on the finale of Secret Invasion. What do you think? And do you think that the MCU will actually build on what's been done here? And do you agree that Gaia and Varra should be in the Marvels? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.